My son and his wife secretly planned to use me as their personal renovation fund, but one overheard conversation made me unleash a plan that shattered their dream kitchen and left their perfect remodel in ruins forever. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. I used to be the kind of man who could work sunrise to sunset without so much as a groan, but these days, even a walk to the mailbox left me winded. My doctor called it restorative physical therapy, but after 3 months of it, I called it a war I was losing. Every morning meant stretching muscles that creaked like old floorboards, lifting weights that felt like anchors, and walking laps that made my heart thump in my ears. Still, I went. I never missed a session. Not just because the therapist kept telling me I was progressing, but because I had promised myself I'd be strong enough to take my granddaughter fishing this summer. No excuses. The sessions left me drained, though, so drained that when my son Peter suggested I move into their basement, just for a while, until I got back to my old self, I said yes. He made it sound like it would be easier for everyone. I'd save the hassle of cooking every night, they'd have someone to greet the kid after school, and I'd get company instead of the quiet hum of my empty house. The first few weeks were fine. I paid for my own groceries, chipped in for utilities, and even bought new tires for Peter's SUV when he mentioned they were dangerously bald. I didn't think twice, that's what fathers do. But as my therapy dragged on, I started to notice small things. Marcy, my daughter-in-law, looking over home decor magazines during breakfast. Peter talking about finally modernizing the kitchen. A folded contractor's estimate sitting on the counter one evening when I went to make tea. I didn't pay it much mind, until the afternoon I was upstairs repairing my granddaughter's dollhouse and I heard Marcy's voice from the kitchen below, casual as a summer breeze. Once we get the renovation fund together, we can redo the dining room and kitchen. It'll be perfect. Peter's voice came next, low but warm with agreement. Yeah, once Dad helps out a little more, we'll be there in no time. Helps out a little more. I froze mid-hinge, the tiny brass screw between my fingers suddenly heavy. My monthly contributions had already covered more than a few of their urgent needs. But apparently, they had me penciled in as the key to their dream remodel, not as family, not as a guest, but as the renovation fund itself. They thought I wouldn't hear. They thought I'd just keep handing over money until the granite countertops and open-concept dreams were theirs. They were wrong. I finished tightening the dollhouse hinge, my hands steady despite the rush of heat climbing my neck. I set the little wooden door in place, smiled at my granddaughter, and told her I needed to rest a bit before dinner. In my basement room, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the carpet. Restorative therapy had taught me a lot about pacing myself, but this was the first time I had to pace my anger. I wasn't angry that they wanted to renovate. I understood pride in your home, I'd spent 40 years keeping mine solid and comfortable. No, what stung was the assumption, the quiet certainty, that I existed to bankroll their plans. By the time I went back upstairs for supper, I'd decided 2 things. I'd keep listening. I wouldn't say a word about what I'd heard, not yet. Over the next 2 weeks, my ears caught more than they were supposed to. Conversations at night when they thought I was asleep. Quick comments over coffee. Granite will really open up the space. With Dad's help, we can splurge on the backsplash I like. Once the dining wall comes down, it'll feel like a whole new house. They talked about colors, layouts, even appliances. But they never talked about paying for it themselves. Every mention of funds circled back to me, and what they thought I could give. I made a point of staying agreeable. Paid for the weekly groceries. Chipped in for their daughter's summer camp deposit. Picked up the tab when we ordered takeout. Let them feel comfortable, certain, secure. And while they slept, I made phone calls. Quiet ones. My first was to the therapist, to schedule my sessions earlier in the day. That way, I'd have my afternoons free for appointments they didn't need to know about. The second was to my credit union. Over the next 10 days, I moved my savings, the comfortable nest egg I'd built over decades, into a separate account they couldn't trace. I arranged a prepayment on my own future rent for a year. I paid off every outstanding bill in my name. And the leftover money? That was going somewhere they'd never see it again. The night before I made my move, I overheard Marcy say, "Once Dad signs over what's left from his savings, we can get the contractor in by August." They weren't just assuming. They were planning my money like it was already theirs. The next morning, over pancakes, I put my fork down. "I've been thinking," I said, my tone light, almost cheerful. "You've both done so much for me while I've been in therapy. I think it's time I made some changes." Peter's eyes lit up. He thought the check was coming. Marcy actually leaned forward in her chair. "I've decided to rent a place closer to the lake. Small, quiet, just for me." I smiled. "Signed the lease yesterday." Peter blinked. "Wait, what about helping with the kitchen?" "Oh, you mean your renovation fund?" I let the words hang in the air. "That's been taken care of. Just, not the way you expected." Marcy's face drained of color. "What does that mean?" "It means every penny you were counting on has been spent, on me. My rent. My bills. My life." I folded my napkin and stood. "See, I realized I'm not a renovation fund. I'm a person. And I'm done paying for other people's dreams." Their silence was worth every drop of sweat I'd shed in therapy. By the time I left that afternoon, my bags were packed, my accounts untouchable, and their dream kitchen was nothing more than graphite lines in Marcy's notebook. And as I closed the car door, I saw Peter standing at the window, realizing, maybe for the first time, that when you build your plans on someone else's back, you'd better be ready to watch them walk away. I left that day without looking back, but I knew Peter and Marcy wouldn't let it go. Sure enough, 2 days later, my phone lit up with Peter's number. I let it ring until it stopped, then listened to the voicemail. "Dad, we need to talk. I think you're making a big mistake. You've always wanted to help family, don't throw that away because of a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. That was his word for plotting to use me like an ATM. I didn't respond. The next call came from Marcy, sweet voice turned syrupy. "Hey, it's me. Listen, we've already put down a deposit with the contractor, and if you could just loan us." I hung up before she finished. By the end of the week, the tone had shifted. Peter's messages were sharper, angrier. "You're going to leave us high and dry? After everything we've done for you? Everything they'd done for me." The phrase was almost funny. What they didn't know was that while they were scrambling to save their kitchen plans, I'd already signed a 1-year lease at the lake. And that leftover money from my savings? I'd used it to finally book the trip my late wife and I had dreamed about, a month-long fishing charter in Alaska with my old army buddy, Frank. The morning I left for the lake, I drove past their house. The blinds were shut tight. A roll of caution tape stretched across their half-demolished kitchen. Work halted because their fund had evaporated. The sight was almost poetic. When I pulled up to my little lakeside cabin, the air smelled like pine and possibility. I unpacked my rods, set a chair on the dock, and poured myself a coffee. For the first time in months, my heart felt light. Not because I'd kept my money, though that certainly helped, but because I'd reminded myself, and them, of something important. I was not a renovation fund. I was a man who had built his life with his own hands. And I wasn't about to let anyone, family or not, tear it down for a granite countertop and a fancy backsplash. The lake was calm, the morning was quiet, and as I cast my line into the water, I smiled. Their dream kitchen was in ruins. Mine was finally built on solid ground.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.